Well, hello, folks. Welcome to the Will to Win podcast. I'm your host, Will Cook, and today we have a very special guest. His name is Tom Tully. As you have followed along with my last three episodes, you might notice there was a kind of a sequence of themes, and the themes were usually around athletics or performance. Today we have something very different, something intense, something that you'll be able to relate to on some level in your life if you've ever had a health issue or a loss. This is going to really bring your attention into focus. And so we have somebody here that has an incredible life experience to share with us, and hopefully it will bring you to your heart and bring you to a place of inspiration. So, Tom, welcome to the show, and get us started a little bit about your journey, about what happened in 2021 and what changed your life.
So yeah, a couple years prior to that, 2019, 2018, 2019, I was having some breathing issues, which my wife and I thought were cardiac related, and I had done some cardiac stress tests, what have you, and my heart was fine. And unfortunately, I didn't connect the dots about um, lung issues that my father had. So
Mhm.
in 2021, October to be exact, my brother had let the family know that he was diagnosed with idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. So, just to give you a brief overview, what pulmonary fibrosis is, it's the scarring of the lungs where you lose breathing capacity.
Okay.
There's a honeycombing that starts at the base of the lungs, and that scarring grows, increases in the lungs, and it stops your breathing capacity where you finally stop any use of your lungs and it feels kind of like you're drowning. So, long story short, my dad was diagnosed when he was 65 and he died when he was 70. So, he was diagnosed in 2005 and he died in 2010,
Wow.
coincidentally, a day before my youngest son was born.
Mm.
And then my brother was diagnosed in October of 21. So I went to my primary care doc and I said, "Hey, listen, I am pretty sure I have pulmonary fibrosis." And my doc is like, "You don't have it. I'm telling you, you don't have it. I promise you, you don't have it." So I tried to make an appointment with a pulmonologist up in Poughkeepsie, where I was living at the time. And the pulmonologist was booked for months. And I've worked in the healthcare industry for the last 25 years or so. And I was able to pull some strings and I got into the pulmonologist the next day and I had some CAT scans done, what have you. And my primary care doc called me. Actually, his office manager called and said, "You and your wife need to come in tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock." And I knew what that meant, right? So we went into the primary care doc the next morning, and that was it. He gave me the diagnosis of pulmonary fibrosis. So obviously, it runs in my family. So it's called familial pulmonary fibrosis. And I was given 2 to 5 years to live in 2021. Unfortunately, with this disease, there's no known cause and no cure. So
Okay. Just real briefly, that must have been really disorienting, for a lot of reasons. And one is understanding where it goes. And that, I think what you're going to invite us into also is like unless you get a transplant, it's kind of a death sentence unless you get that transplant. And so knowing that you have this in your family history, knowing what it means, I can imagine that you lost your bearings for a bit and you were probably in a swirl of emotions. Take us into the intensity of that and what that was like, if you don't mind doing so.
yeah, it sucked. It was a devastating period. Um, you go through all the stages of grieving, right? And I was in denial first, just saying it can't be. This isn't what's happening. Whatever. Um, and then my wife and I sat and thought about uh, getting our affairs in order. Right. The one thing that struck me, Will, as hard as the 2 to 5 years left to live with the diagnosis was, my doctor said to me, we're going to do our best to make you live as healthy as you can before you go. And that was tough. So Allison and I were trying to figure out how to get our affairs in order, had to get a will done right away, fill out healthcare proxy.
Mm.
And then the next step was telling friends and family. I was fortunate at that time, but I've been very fortunate with my professional career working in the pharmaceutical industry that I've been really, really close to my coworkers, my managers, what have you. And I had conversations with my then manager, Ross Grant, and it was a cry fest from both of us. You know, I said, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what direction this is going to happen. I don't know where this is going to go. So that was challenging. But the next step was telling my boys, and um, I remember that day like it was yesterday. We were at the soccer field watching my youngest son's game, and my two older boys. So I have quite the age gap with my kids, but my two older boys were at the game, and I brought my youngest son to the game, and my wife was home and told my boys, and then their girlfriends, of my diagnosis and of the outlook of, you know, how long I have to live. And when the boys got to the game,
Mm.
it was uh, it was tough.
Mm.
So
I,
it was tough.
you know, and obviously we'll talk more about what you had to go through to get to where you are now to still be here with us. So we haven't gotten to the victory, but what what I'm sensing from you is it's still you could retrieve it as if it were yesterday, and that the feelings are very raw and challenging for you. And I want to thank you because you're going to help somebody just by even if a man watches this and has permission to feel something because men, we're shamed when we're taught to suck it up or man up and not feel. And the courage that you're showing in your vulnerability right now is very powerful in itself. And that might, if that even just helps a healthy male, to give them permission that, hey, this is okay. That's another thing. And also, if somebody's watching this and they have cancer or pulmonary fibrosis, or if they have a health problem and they're in that level of uncertainty, is you can give them permission to feel and also permission to be in denial, because denial actually is a very useful tool to
Yeah,
put affairs in order. Because if you're not in denial, how the hell do you put your affairs in order, right? I mean, because of all that
right.
emotion.
Yeah,
So, what was your boys' responses as you told them? Was it a cry fest there as well?
it was a lot of crying and hugging. And
Okay.
my boys, who are now 31 and 28, my older boys, my youngest is 15. They um they were devastated, and I think part of that, Will, is knowing that this horrific disease runs in the family, right? So that's
Oh, huh.
the
Yeah.
unknown, right? And there's no way to tell genetically or otherwise until their mid to late 40s whether or not they have this awful disease.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so I think, obviously they were sad and distraught over what I was challenged with, but I think they were thinking about their own personal future, what they might have to face as well. Right? So,
Right. So you had to be honest about all of it. You had to be honest where you were at, and then also the possibilities in the future and the kind of the crapshoot involved in all this, because it sounds like it's a later onset type disease. And so you have to develop symptoms in order to know. And it's like rolling of the dice, and you could go along and think everything's okay. And the next thing you know it, there's something going on in your breathing, and you go, uh-oh. And then you go
yeah,
from there. But what you're modeling for them, and this will take us a little bit into your future or into a later point than we're talking about, but is you're giving them a roadmap as well. And also they get a chance to see their father vulnerable, and also they get to see what is going on now. But let me ask, so at what point did the doctor start introducing the idea of a transplant? Was that something he waited on? Did he start talking about that right away? How did take us through that?
So after diagnosis, I was then looking for a pulmonologist who had a strong background with pulmonary fibrosis. And I
Okay.
was fortunate enough, the pulmonologist who I was then seeing in Poughkeepsie, his name is Harry Sushielan. Harry had made some connections for me and contacted the head of pulmonology, Dr. Christine Garcia at Columbia.
Okay.
And Dr. Garcia is one of the thought leaders in the US, if not internationally, on pulmonary fibrosis. And right away, she took me as a patient. So I was very, very, very fortunate to
Mhm.
have a thought leader in my disease state. Um, I mean, she gives talks across the country, and basically, her practice is compromised of seeing patients for one day and doing research the other 4 days. And that's all she does.
Wow.
So I was blessed with being a patient of Dr. Garcia's. And so I saw Dr. Garcia for a period of like a year and a half or 2 years. And what happened was that my disease had progressed
Mhm.
very, very quickly. The fibrotic matter in my lungs had grown at a significant pace. And the other terrible thing with this disease is you can't tell how quick you're going to get really, really sick. But
Mhm.
I got very, very sick very fast. And I was fortunate enough because Dr. Garcia is the head of pulmonology at Columbia, and because Columbia works with New York Presbyterian, I became the patient of the head of the transplant unit, Dr. Selim Archasoy,
Mhm.
and I became his patient. But what it came down to, Will, was my capacity. They don't consider you until you're critical,
Which is
and
there a certain percentage of lung capacity? Like I think you told me you were at 5%.
there's a 5% for both lungs. Yeah, so it's generally 10% less,
Okay.
but it's a variable in that it depends how quickly it's progressing, right? So, and once you become eligible for a transplant, you go through a huge battery of tests,
Okay.
but they also look at the viability of the patient, right? They look at, is the patient of good health? Does the patient have a good lifestyle, a good nutrition? Because the other thing that this whole experience has really made me realize is that healthcare, especially with rare
Yeah.
critical diseases, healthcare is a numbers game, you
Mhm.
know? So they want to look at who has the best possible survivor rates
Mhm.
so that when the healthcare institution shows our stats, who lived the longest, who lived the best, you know. So that's another thing that they take into consideration. But when I got down to 5% capacity on both my lungs, um, they put me on the transplant list, and I was approved for a double lung transplant.
Oh, wow. Let me ask you
Yeah.
a
So
question. Um,
yeah,
so knowing that you were at 5% and then being put on a list, that had to be really challenging because here you are, you're feeling like you're drowning.
yeah,
And you're going through each day with that laboring, which probably created tremendous anxiety. And then you're probably getting hopeful about a transplant, and then maybe it falls through, or something happens where there's some type of complication, or you get your hopes up. I mean, things weren't getting better for you, so that had to be really tough in trusting the unknown and trusting the uncertainty.
absolutely. So a transplant in and of itself, is a life risking event, right? And so that was incredibly daunting thinking about that. Um, the other part was we did what's called dry runs. So
Okay.
a dry run is when the hospital calls you and says, "We have lungs, come to the hospital." So we did 6 dry runs. And what happens with the dry run is you go to the hospital and they take blood and they hook you up with catheters and get you ready for the transplant. And you don't know if you're the primary patient or the secondary patient, right? Because there's a lot to it's blood compatibility for a lung, but it's also the size, right? The lung has to fit,
Oh,
which a lot
wow.
of people don't take into consideration, right? So we got the call actually 7 times. We did 6 dry runs. We got the call 7 times to go to the hospital. And the crazy thing, Will, is at that point, we were living in Pleasant Valley outside of Poughkeepsie, and I never got the call when I was home. I always got the call when we were at friends in Long Island, when we were up in the Adirondacks, when we were in Cape Cod.
Oh,
I
God.
never got the call at home. So the 6 dry runs that I did get, we packed everything up and made that trip. And obviously coming from the
Oh,
Cape,
God.
that's a 5, 6 hour drive that
That's brutal.
you're not only rushing to get to the hospital, but you have that much time to sit in a car and to reflect on your own mortality and think about, okay, this is it. I'm going to get cut open
Mm.
and I'm either going to come out the other side or I'm not, right? The seventh call that we got was a lung from a patient that had HIV, was a drug abuser, and had apparently multiple sex partners. And they told me all this. And there's a 1 in a million chance that the lung would have an issue with HIV, what have you. I turned that down before making the run. Like, there's no, I
Right,
said, you know how you avoid a 1 in a million chance? You don't take the lung, right?
right, right,
So,
right.
uh,
Well,
yeah, so it was a crazy, crazy, crazy period.
I can
And
imagine.
when you finally get to know, when you get to the hospital and they do all the blood draws and they have you all hooked up, um, it's crazy to know that you're finally the primary patient and not the backup patient.
Okay, so take us through that because you've had 7 moments where you got your hopes up and then you had your hopes potentially taken away. What was it like
Yep.
when they did the blood, draw the blood, they looked for size compatibility, all those things, and they said, okay, we're going to do the surgery. Take us through what that's like for you or what that, step back into that for a moment if you can.
Yeah. So that I really a huge dichotomy of feelings, right? When you're all hooked up and you're there for 4, 5, 6 hours in the hospital, and the nurse walks in and goes, "Today's not your day."
Mm,
That's it's like it's a little bit of relief,
mhm.
but it's not because you think about, okay, I'm not getting the lung, so I'm gonna die from this, right?
Well,
The other side, the last run that we made, um, I went in and I met with the transplant doc, and he said, "So here's the story." And this is the other crazy part of this whole thing. Well, is he said, "We have one good lung for you." And I'm like, "One, okay. Tell me about it." He said, "It's a young, healthy patient who has no medical history." And he said, "What our choices are is we could wait for 2 mediocre lungs, or I could just give you one really healthy lung." So I was like, "I'm here. This is going to work. Let's just do the one lung. Just put it in." And it was crazy because it was a Sunday night. I was, in Manhattan. Um, I had brothers, two of my brothers show up and their kids, and it was weird. Well, because I had nieces in the hospital with me. I had my brothers with me. I had my wife, obviously, and they were laughing and joking and trying to make light of it. And it was hard for me to be present
Hmm. Hmm.
because I was freaking out. I was absolutely freaking out. I was like, this is crazy. This is, you know, um, so it was a very weird out of body experience. I remember sitting in the bed all wired up and having, again, my family surrounding me, but I don't remember what was said. I don't remember what was discussed. I just remember being like, this is it. This is going to be whether or not I'm going to be around or not.
So some people would think that that was the solution and that everything would be okay, but it was just the beginning of another process. Is number one, another curveball, like instead of two lungs, here's one. And then he's
Right?
offering you the option of going, another crapshoot in the future. You can get two mediocre lungs, or we don't know when the next lung. So we have one viable good one that's from a healthy young person. So do you take that level of certainty from that moment and make that choice, or do you hedge your bets and look for another possibility? And at that moment, you realize this is going to happen. And everybody in the room is kind of trying to make light of it. But if they were tuned into, they'd realize that this is about to get serious because not
Yep.
only do you get a lung transplant, because we haven't even got into what the challenges are after you get a lung transplant, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then the idea of like, well, I have one lung, so like that means I'm probably going to still be out of breath at times, but I'll probably still be able to do a lot of things. So it's not like it solves any, it doesn't solve it, it keeps you alive.
Right.
But you have
Yep.
to then still deal with how your life is about to change radically from that point on.
Right. Right. So I was at that night, at that period, thinking about it's just going to give me a couple more years.
Mm,
And it was a quick solution for me.
mm,
And because my breathing was I mean, I was on oxygen. It was not pretty. Um, I was at a point like, this is my last option. Like, if I turn down that one lung, how long is it going to be before I get an offer for two, right? That are blood compatible, that are size compatible. When is that next? So you deal with that, and you deal with, to your point, the anxiety, the depression. I mean, there was, um, I gave a talk to my company to about 2,000 um, viewers, attendees of my speech. But the depression, the anxiety, the suicidal ideation was all there because you felt like there was no option, and this is the end, right? And how do I get closer to the end without dealing with all this pain,
mhm.
right? Because this disease is it's awful. I remember watching my dad walking 50 steps to his mailbox and being completely out of breath. And that's where I was. You walk up 3 or 4 stairs and you have to sit because you can't breathe. And this was prior to the transplant. It
Wow.
was, it's scary as hell, it's just,
Wow.
and to know that you have a viable option, it kind of makes your decision just go, yep, yep, let's do
It
this
it it
now. Let's get
it
this over with.
it became simple at that point.
Yeah,
As much as the
right.
mind was
Yeah,
swirling, when you focused
yeah,
on getting out of the feeling you were in, which is feeling like you're drowning, the
yeah,
uncertainty of if I do wait, do I put myself closer to death or do I put myself in further discomfort? Then you said, well, whatever, I know I'm going to get more years. It's just a matter of how much quality, but it's better to take this risk than to deal with all the uncertainty and all that feeling of drowning that you were going to deal with. So I'm going to ask an overarching question that will
yeah,
encapsulate the recovery part. And I know there's a lot, there's probably, you have the risk of rejection, right? And you have to take those drugs, right? I mean, I know that's part of it too, which we'll get into as well. But I want to ask you a
Yeah.
question. How has this journey shaped you, your perspective on time and relationships and what really matters in life? What has this done to you? How has it changed you as a human? And what is your outlook?
That's a loaded question. So a lot of it's a mixed bag, right? I'm very, very concerned about my children. I'm very concerned about what the future holds, but I'm also kind of living for today. I've come up with this saying, and I don't think I've ever shared it with you, but I mean, for 25 years, I've been working in the psychiatry sleeve
Yeah,
and dealing with psychiatrists and
therapist.
psych nurse practitioners and therapists. And
Hmm.
so I don't know if I ever shared this with you, Will, but there's a reason why the windshield is much bigger than the rearview mirror, right?
I just used
So
that today,
you
by the way.
can't,
Yep.
did you?
Yeah, this
Yeah.
morning
So
at eight
I
o'clock, I
mean,
used that same analogy. Yep.
nice. Yeah. That's big to me. Like right now, I'm here right now. I'm alive right now. Um, I have to live for today.
Hmm.
And I can't sit here and reflect on the diagnosis, the reality of it, right? The 2 to 5 years. You can't think about that. You just have to try to
Yeah,
be as happy as you are today,
that's right.
right? And you have to try to let go what happened yesterday because there's nothing we could do about what happened yesterday. I can't change this morning. I can't change yesterday. I can't change last week, but I can influence tonight, tomorrow, next week, right?
Mhm.
So that being said, it's not all, it's not positive all the time. You have your moments where you fall into that pit and go,
Hmm.
I'm screwed. This is awful. This is a really, really bad situation. And it's challenging to lift yourself out of that spot. But the longer you deal with it, the better at it you become, if that makes sense, right? The longer that you're able to cope with, okay, I'm here now and things are good, and there's always solutions to whatever problems you're going to
Hmm.
have.
Hmm.
It makes it easier to to get to a positive place faster
Hmm. Hmm.
and to stay in a positive place longer,
You've trained your
right?
mindset. What you've gone through is trained your mindset. And now you're looking for when people are stuck, they tend to attract more of stuck. When you learn about resourcefulness and you start to see what can I do about this, or how can I shift my mindset, or what's the best action to take, whatever quality of the question you ask will determine what you focus on. So now you're
Yeah,
focusing on solution and what you can control. And there's not a lot that we can control, but we can control our next action or our next thought in terms of our mindset. But sometimes it takes a while to get there because sometimes we're stuck in the despair, we're stuck in victim states, we're stuck in the pain. But sometimes we overindulge there, and sometimes we have to just give ourselves permission to move out of it and do things within our control to get out of it. So, which leads me to the
yeah,
next thing. Um, so the next level of health is making a difference, right? There are six human needs, and we need to grow and we need to contribute to the greater good. And those are the two spiritual needs of the six. So as a result of your life, your family, and your continued legacy, um, tell us more about Three Lakes, the 1220 Foundation. Tell us more about your involvement, your role, and what your hopes are and dreams are for that.
so I have worked with, there are a number of foundations that that center around pulmonary fibrosis. And I've worked with a couple. What makes Three Lakes 1220 completely different than the other foundations is that Three Lakes um, focuses on research, strictly research, right? So again, this is a disease that takes 50,000 American lives a year, uh, and nobody knows about the disease. Um, what Three Lakes does is we take 100% of funds raised, and it goes all towards finding answers for pulmonary fibrosis, specifically idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, because there's no known cause and there's no cure. So what we do is we fundraise and we put that money directly towards the research element of that. And so that's important to know, Will, and I'll tell you why, because these other foundations are awesome, but they focus a lot on patient support, right? Patient education, patient awareness, patient support, which is all fine.
Right.
But what we do
You
at
want to
Three
get to the
Lakes,
root. I'm sorry to interrupt. You want to get to the root of it.
yeah,
You want to deal with how can
yep.
we find a cure for this?
So, right. And one of the things that I selfishly keep thinking about is if we're successful in finding causes and finding a cure, and I know we will, I absolutely know we won't need patient support programs. We won't need those other programs. So that's what truly makes us different. 100% of our funds raised goes all to research. And, and selfishly, so my brother's on the board of directors, my brother Sean, I'm what's called a patient delegate for Three Lakes.
Okay.
So I speak to patients and support groups, but I can do it from the standpoint of, hey, we're not looking just to find answers. I'm dealing with this, right? I am an actual patient. I know what you're going through. I feel your pain. And that's what drives our motivation, right?
Okay.
And knowing that my dad passed, that my brother has it, and that I have it, it's scary.
Hmm.
It's a scary proposition. And so selfishly, I want to help my nieces, my nephews, my boys. Obviously, I'm going to be helping others
Hmm.
who are struggling with pulmonary fibrosis or who, may have it in the future. But because it's a very prevalent disease, but if I could be a part of the solution
Hmm.
in getting answers for this disease, then
Hmm.
my job is done. So
Yeah.
that's what makes Three Lakes. Oh, and the interesting part, a lot of people ask about the 1220. That's the normal number of breaths everyone takes in a minute.
Wow.
So that's an important part of our foundational name is that 1220. We want to help people keep breathing and stay alive.
Okay. So when you said delusion, that's a very important kind of mindset that many people who have created amazing things, they all start out delusional. They take on challenges that nobody thinks is possible. And you have to have that delusion, like it's somebody saying, well, the earth is round or it's flat, and then they're throwing rocks at them. Is it has to start off as like you're crazy, you're out of your mind.
Yeah,
This couldn't possibly happen. So you have to
yeah,
think outside the box and you have to be willing to live there. The thing is, you have so much leverage. One is you went through it. Two, you have a lot of uncertainty with your family as to what they could go through in the future. And
yeah,
that's a heavy thought, even though that's uncertain in itself. But I would imagine it contributes to your drive towards wanting to find something for this and that leverage, because there's two forces of leverage in life, pain and pleasure. Either you have
yeah,
pain that drives you to change, or you have something inspiring that drives you to change. Pain is a much bigger leverage energy source than inspiration will ever be.
yeah.
So this probably has you waking up and saying, what can I do? How can I make a difference? What's the next step or whatever that is, even when you don't want to. So what is the web address and what is the recommended donation? How does that work? Is there
There's
what's the
no
best way to do
recommended.
this?
Every little bit helps, right? I mean, the nice thing is that Three Lakes 1220 last year we raised $25 million
Hmm.
and put it again, 100% of it towards research, which makes us, very different from the other foundations. But um, anything helps. It's, what you can afford. What I strongly suggest. So the website is Three Lakes. So you have to spell out Three Lakes, THREE, Three Lakes 1220.org.
Okay.
And if you go on there, it's a great website. It's actually a very cool website that my good friend Lauren Nutter put together. But it's it explains what the disease is. It
Okay.
explains what the realities of mortality with the disease.
Hmm.
Um, we have an amazing board. We have a bunch of docs that all specialize in pulmonary fibrosis that are on our board that help us direct our funds towards research that we think will have the best outcomes, if you will.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, anything you can give. Like I would ask, well, my number one priority, and I told this when I started working with Three Lakes 1220, my first objective is raising disease state awareness,
Okay.
right? Because if you look at um, breast cancer awareness, what have you, they're all over the place, right? Which is phenomenal. It's great. But when you talk about pulmonary fibrosis, this is the other scary part. A lot of my docs were like, yeah, I kind of know what pulmonary fibrosis is, but I've never met anybody who has
Oof.
it, right? And the fact that pulmonary fibrosis takes as many lives as breast cancer does on
Yet
an
nobody
annual
knows about it.
basis,
Right.
yet nobody knows about it. So I think my first goal is to make people more aware of what pulmonary fibrosis is and that it's a tragic disease and it takes many, many, many lives. It touches many families. Um, I think once you get there, once you have more disease state awareness of that it's out there and its prevalency, then the funding becomes a lot easier,
Okay.
right? So um, there's a lot of famous actors that have died from this. There's the famous people that have family members that have died from pulmonary fibrosis, but nobody, the awareness of it is minimal. So that's my goal is even if you just go to the website, Three Lakes 1220.org, if you just go to the website and just become more aware of the condition, that's great. That's
Okay.
perfect. And if you are able to donate, that's even better. Um, but again, I would really just like more people to be aware of it,
Hmm.
so that you know the prevalency of it and you know the destruction of it, right? So
Hmm. And that it's hereditary and
that it can be. So there's
I
very
can't.
few patients that have familial pulmonary fibrosis. I
Okay.
mean, so that's the crazy thing too. If you look at this from a pharma standpoint, it's an orphan disease where there's not a lot of pharma won't spend that time and money to go through 4 phases of clinical trial studies to try to find an answer or uh, something that will slow down the progression. So there's two drugs that were developed and approved by the FDA in 2014, and they're drugs to slow down the fibrotics. They're drugs to slow down the um, the hardening of the lungs, so they'll in theory slow down the disease state. But the side effect profile is wicked awful,
Right.
really, really bad.
Right. Right.
So I mean, yeah,
And it
the
doesn't
with
it doesn't solve it. It just slows the progression.
it doesn't solve it, and I'll give you kind of a graphic, gory detail, but it is what it is. With one of the antifibrotics, the one that I took, 75% chance that you will have very, very serious diarrhea. And it's, a lot of these patients go, I can't deal with the side effects of the drug. So I might as well just let. this disease take its course.
Oh.
So that's the other big challenge. But pharma doesn't look at this because there aren't enough sick patients, right? It's
Mm.
not like depression. It's not like anxiety. It's not like cancer, where there's a lot more folks that get this, so they won't invest the money into it. Now, there are some pharmaceutical companies. There's BI, Boehringer Ingelheim, and there's smaller pharmaceutical companies like Rain Therapeutics that do look at pulmonary fibrosis, but there isn't enough. There isn't enough pharmaceutical industries that look into this, because I don't think it's worth it from an economic standpoint. That's my guess why they don't look into it. Um, and again, I think the more awareness of this disease state, the more it will propel not only funding, but maybe inspire pharmaceutical companies to actually, more of them to be proactively looking at this disease state.
Okay. So, um, one is your story, obviously very moving and very much still at the surface for you. It sounds like you could tap that emotion at any moment.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it's, at times you might, think like, hey, this is really tough. And it sounds like that there's other times where you go from that to inspiration or passion. And I'm sure it's depending on how you felt that specific day. So it's got to be, it sounds like an ongoing challenge to stay present with it and with all this. And it's a lot. And it also can potentially put you into the unknown of the future because of not knowing the crapshoot of who it's going to affect in your life in terms of your loved ones and stuff like that. But
Yep.
I hope that people went with us a little bit in that emotion because it's what causes people usually to act. You see that commercial that you got the stray dogs, you got Sarah McLachlan playing the music. You're feeling
Yeah.
all that feeling and you want to make a difference. And I hope people, felt this. And then I hope they have the curiosity to go and look at the website, Three Lakes. And I hope that, we can do this again sometime to, you know, help with any updates in the field in terms of promise for a cure. Um, you can give me an update on how Three Lakes is doing, how you're doing.
Would love
At some
that. Yeah.
point, have you back on again, and then just reinforce the initial message that we sent out the first time. So anyway, folks, thanks for tuning in. Tom, thank you for being my guest. And this is Will
Thank you
Cook
for
from the
having
Will
me.
to Win podcast. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Will.